Hello and welcome to today's daily response video from People Make It Work. Today I am delighted to be joined by Michele Taylor. Hello, Michele.
Hello.
Nice that you are with us today and thank you for spending time with us.
My pleasure.
So Michele is incredibly skilled at working with people and where people are at any given moment. And she also comes with a diversity hat on and a specialism specifically with disability. So really brilliant to have you with us today. I'm keen to jump straight in on how you are and your perspective in the last 6 weeks of this new way of being.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Zara. It's great to be here. Thanks for asking me. How am I? Today I'm good, actually. Yeah, I'm feeling quite energized. I'm feeling, you know how it is. It's like some days the keyboard's on fire and you're really owning Zoom and it's all brilliant. And then other days I just want to curl up with a cup of coffee and words with friends. But fortunately, this isn't one of those days. So yeah, I'm good and staying well. Thank you. So yeah, very thankful for a house with some space and a house with a garden. Really, really thankful.
I hear you on riding the waves of this. Some days, like super motivated, zooming around the room, and other days, cup of tea, snuggling.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's certainly such a common theme as I speak to people. It's interesting. I would say that my focus generally in my work is kind of twofold. That I'm really interested in individuals and how individuals tick, and what motivates individuals, and the processes internally that individuals go through and kind of adopt for themselves, and then how that manifests in the wider world, in organizations and sectors and the culture of all of that. So I guess the observations that I've been thinking about are based on those two levels. Shall I just jump straight in?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so my conversations in the last few weeks have been mainly with people whose working patterns have changed completely and suddenly. So it's with those individuals predominantly who are now working from home, who weren't before, and the individuals who are leaders in their organizations and who are managing those people. So my observations are informed by those conversations, predominantly then at the individual level. And I've found myself thinking a lot about William Bridges' model, his kind of three-part model of transitions. Mm-hmm. And firstly, that distinction between change and transition, which I think is deeply fascinating and quite important. So he says, doesn't he, that change is something that happens to us, and transition is about the internal processes that we adopt and use to navigate that change, and what happens psychologically for us. So I've been thinking about that and using that model as a kind of hook to base what I've been thinking about, to base that on. One of the things I really love about Bridges' model is that I think it's deeply respectful of individuals and the differences between the way people experience change. In other words, the difference in the transitions that people go through, and the mismatch in timing sometimes. And what I've been aware of as I speak to people is not only the commonalities, because there are tons of commonalities, that kind of roller coaster riding the wave, as you say, is a real commonality. Loads of people are experiencing that. But the mismatch, that obviously my day of wanting to sit with a cup of tea and just snuggle might be your day of really wanting to get things going. And that's kind of issue and how we navigate that. So Bridges talks about 3 stages. He talks about loss and endings as the first stage. Then he talks about the neutral, which is that almost that bridge between what was and what is to come, so the neutral zone. And then he talks about the new beginnings. So I'm going to use that structure to base my observations on, as well as the individual and organizational. So that the loss phase, I think, is really interesting, especially if you also add on to that Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief. And then, of course, adding David Kessler and his 6th stage, which is making meaning, which I think is perhaps most significant, or kind of most apparent and evident and concerning lots of people. And one of the things that's interesting to me is that it seems that we have all been catapulted into this time of change so quickly that we've leapfrogged loss and we've gone straight into the neutral. And I just think that's worth noting. I just think it's worth noting that we haven't had a lot of time to look back and think about the things that we've lost, because we're in the neutral, we're in the reshaping, the reworking, the managing. Some people call the neutral the wilderness zone. And I've certainly talked to people for whom this really is a wilderness zone. They're feeling lost, they're feeling confused, they're feeling insecure, they're feeling unsure even of the things that they were previously sure of. What's interesting, though, is that for some people, the neutral zone is really energizing because it's an opportunity for real creativity and innovation. And if we look at what we've done as a sector, that has been extraordinary in terms of the neutral zone and how we've used the neutral zone. I'll talk about that again in a minute. And then the 3rd phase, the new beginnings, is where we settle into what it says, the new beginning, and what that's going to be. So I'll talk about that again.
And I can really feel, listening to you, like in that neutral wilderness zone, the polarities of what you described, that some people might be feeling motivated and energized at that point and others completely lost. And in communicating with each other, just how mindful you need to be that what you're experiencing may or may not be the same as others.
Yeah, absolutely. And so so there are some principles here that I think could be really valuable. One is curiosity. So isn't it interesting how that question, how are you, has become so different in the last 6 weeks? It's not, hi, how are you? Moving on. It's, no, really, how are you? How you know, how are you impacted? What's going on? Are you well? And genuine curiosity. I really would like to know how you are, in order that we can set that as the basis for our conversation or our joint activity or our joint endeavour or whatever it might be. And I love that curiosity. And I hope we can hang on to that. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about hanging on to stuff. So the curiosity, but also the compassion of okay, there's stuff we do actually need to do today. You're not feeling great. You're having a day of pessimism and lack of energy. Okay, how can we work with this? Do you know, I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to think badly of you. We're all doing our best here. So how can we take this forward? So I think curiosity and compassion are so valuable in that neutral zone, and I think we're doing that really, really well. And I've spoken to so many individuals who are so appreciative of managers and leaders who are going, do you know what? You've got the kids at home. You are not going to put in as many hours as you usually would. You're not necessarily going to be as productive as you usually would. That's okay. Let's just keep talking about it. And I just think that's brilliant. There's other stuff in that neutral zone as well, isn't there? There's new mechanisms. I mean, Zoom isn't new, but it's become ubiquitous. and we've adopted things like Zoom wholesale without really, for many of us, thinking about what the implications of that are. And Zoom fatigue is a real thing. You know, having a conversation with someone via Zoom is not the same as having the conversation in the room. You can't zone in and out the way you naturally do when you're in the room with someone. You're not picking up on the nonverbal cues. You're not sharing the atmosphere and the ambient sounds of whatever's going in the room. There's so much that you're not sharing, and it's exhausting. And
Interesting.
I think we're learning that.
It's interesting to think in the long run how things like this, like if they became a habitual pattern, how that could actually affect our ways of communicating.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think what you've said is really interesting, because one of the things that I've been thinking about is how the way we are now in this neutral zone is setting the habits for the future. It's actually beginning to shape the future. And we need, I keep using the word mindful, don't I? But I just think that mindfulness, in the sense of doing things out of awareness, and not out of not doing things from just habit or from routine or automatically or without realizing that we're doing. The more we can do from awareness, the more we can pick and choose what we hang on to and what we jettison. The more we can go, that was great for then, and we might keep it a little bit, but for now, this is not going to work very well anymore. Or, oh, that thing we learned to do, how we learned to let people work from home and trust them, maybe that's something we can keep doing. So I think that notion of the habits that we want to hang on to is really interesting. And I worry about that too, because I'm seeing quite a lot of practice that is excluding of disabled people. Doors are being closed to disabled people, and they're doors that we really were only just beginning to crack open, and that's quite frightening and concerning. So one of the things is the sheer amount of digital product that's out there, and it's great, it's fantastic. That it's out there, but so much of it is not giving due consideration to making sure that disabled and deaf people can actually enjoy that stuff and contribute to that stuff in the same way that other people can. So I worry that habit of excluding disabled people that we just begun to question. And it really is quite recent, that habit will settle back in again. So I hope we're gonna start some good habits, and there are some great examples out there already of organisations that are using some really good innovative mechanisms to make sure that disabled people are included.
Yeah, it's that it comes into the mindful, aware approaches and embracing compassion around, as an organization, whatever you're creating now, to stay communicative with your audiences or your new audiences.
Yeah.
That you are considering the barriers for everyone.
Yeah.
In what you're making.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. And one of the things that's quite ironic about some of that is that some of these working practices, and I mean both the way we put product out there, and also the way in which people are working remotely from home. Although I did read a really interesting article which has led me to think I should stop using the phrase remote working and start talking about distributed working instead. It's a really interesting distinction. But anyway, those working practices of people working from home. One of the ironies is, two things, and this is coming to talk about the new beginnings really, is the fact that a lot of the stuff that we've put into place for people to work effectively from home, a lot of those things are things that disabled and deaf people have been asking for years. That flexibility, that openness to do something differently, that lack of insistence that you're there at your desk at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning, really only so that you can be seen to be at your desk at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, do you know? Some of that flexibility and some of those mechanisms that people are now using, like I say, they're things that disabled and deaf people have been asking for years, and we've been being told it's not possible, it's too expensive, we can't access the software, it's just not practical, it would take too long to implement. And lo and behold, within 2 weeks, those things were in place. And again, that's something we need to remember. We need to remember and celebrate how innovative and creative and flexible and agile cultural organizations can be, and build that into the new beginning, because that way we're gonna get a far more diverse workforce, and therefore that way we're going to be more exciting organizations and make more exciting work. The other aspect of that, of course, as well, is that there's a lot of this stuff that is very, very new to many people that is really, really familiar to disabled and deaf people. A lot of disabled and deaf people have been doing, for instance, this sheltering lark for a very long time. A lot of deaf and disabled people know how to work in isolation. Because they've had to. A lot of disabled and deaf people really know how to use technology to stay in touch with other people because we've had to. So there is a whole wealth of experience and knowledge and information that deaf and disabled people are holding and wanting to share with other people that the cultural sector could really do well to make the most of. So there's all about that. I have one other worry as we go into the new beginning, and that is a very practical one, which is we won't be able to take everybody with us if we're not careful, because releasing lockdown isn't binary. It's not an on-off switch. It's going to happen. Releasing lockdown is going to happen very gradually, but there will come a point when most people are able physically to return to work, physically to be able to meet people, physically go to a recording studio or a rehearsal room or a workshop space or whatever it might be, or a gallery or a studio, whatever it might be. But there will be a significant number of people who will still be sheltering because they have to, because it's still too dangerous out there for them. And I really hope that we're able to find ways to make sure that we don't just revert to that very physical building-based way of working and forget all of those people who are still sheltering, and therefore lose the cultural enrichment that they can bring to our organisations and to the work that we make. So I kind of worry about that. So I guess I have worries and I have optimism, and I think that there's a lot that's potentially really, really exciting. But as you point out, it's only going to be actualized, that excitement, as long as we're mindful.
Yeah. Michele, it's so fascinating listening to you, hearing you, and thank you so much for so openly sharing your optimisms and your worries, your concerns. And also the theories that you've shared with us today. It's such a plethora of tools that are out there that we can be looking at. And particular, your kind of thread around staying curious, staying compassionate, and staying mindful and aware. So thank you so much for your time and your knowledge, and I hope to see you back here again.
My pleasure, thank you. And thank you for that very eloquent summary, far more pithy than I could have been.
Thank you, Michele.